12,000 years ago, a forgotten bowl of fruit changed everything. Early humans left berries in a container and forgot about them. Days later, they found it bubbling and fizzy. It smelled strange, but when they tasted it, something incredible happened to their minds. They felt different. This was humanity's first alcohol. This accidental discovery would reshape human civilization forever. But why did we keep doing it? Fermentation is dangerous and can kill you. So why did every ancient civilization brew alcohol? The answer is older than farming, cities, and writing itself. It's older than civilization. Archaeological evidence shows humans were brewing beer 13,000 years ago. That's before agriculture. We didn't farm to eat. We farmed to get drunk. This is the dark truth about human civilization. Grain could feed you for days, or it could become alcohol. Ancient humans chose the buzz. That choice built temples, created religions, and forged the first governments in history. But fermentation wasn't just about getting drunk. It was actually about survival. Ancient water was full of parasites and bacteria. But fermented beer? The alcohol killed everything. Children drank beer for breakfast. Workers were paid in alcohol. It was safer than water. Fermentation preserved food through winter. It turned poisonous plants into safe meals. Cassava contains cyanide, but ferment it first, and it becomes edible. Ancient humans were biochemists. This knowledge separated us from animals. Only humans harness microbes for our benefit. But how did they discover this? By watching animals get drunk in nature. Elephants, birds, baboons all get drunk on fermented fruit. Humans copied them. They experimented with different fruits to see which fermented best. They recorded recipes on clay tablets. The oldest written recipe is for beer. Ancient breweries produced thousands of liters. This was industrial-scale fermentation. Beer became currency. Workers building pyramids were paid in bread and beer. Religions demanded alcohol offerings because gods were believed to love fermented drinks. Fermentation didn't just change what we drank, it changed what we became. Before farming, humans were hunter-gatherers collecting fruits, nuts and honey. Sometimes they stored extra food in hollowed gourds or clay pots for later. But life was busy with hunting and gathering, so sometimes they forgot about stored food. Weeks later, they'd find it covered in mold, bubbling and smelling interesting. The bravest among them would taste it, risky, but the reward was incredible. A warm feeling, reduced anxiety, euphoria. Their brains flooded with dopamine. They shared this discovery, and word spread through tribes like wildfire. Soon they weren't forgetting food, they were intentionally fermenting it. They learned which fruits worked best: grapes, honey, berries, and dates. Then came the breakthrough. Wild grains left wet would ferment into beer. They discovered chewing grain. Started fermentation because saliva contains enzymes. Yes, ancient beer was made from chewed and spit grain, but it worked. Over generations, techniques improved with better temperature, timing, and sanitation. They didn't know about yeast or bacteria, but they knew how to use them. This knowledge was passed down through generations as sacred wisdom. Different regions developed their own specialties: wine, beer, mead, and sake. They created special pottery vessels designed specifically for fermentation. They learned to seal containers to control the fermentation process better. They discovered timing was everything. Too short or too long ruined the batch. A successful fermentation was cause for celebration and community gathering. Elders controlled the recipes and guarded the secrets of fermentation. Fermentation became essential for surviving winter when fresh food was scarce. They fermented vegetables, meat, fish, and dairy. Nothing was wasted. Fermented grain dough left overnight would rise. Bread was born from beer. The desire for alcohol may have driven humans to settle and start farming. Some archaeologists believe we domesticated grain for beer before bread. Ancient Egypt had entire breweries dedicated to producing beer for workers. Pharaohs were buried with wine to drink in the afterlife. Some jars still exist. Mesopotamians brewed beer from dates and barley over 6,000 years ago. China was fermenting rice, millet, and fruit wines over 9,000 years ago. Greek symposiums were drinking parties where philosophy and wine flowed freely. Romans mixed wine with water, honey, and even lead, which slowly poisoned them. Norse Vikings drank mead made from honey and believed it gave them strength. Japanese sake brewing became a sacred art form perfected over centuries. African tribes brewed sorghum and millet beer for ceremonies and celebrations. Mayans fermented honey into mead and cacao into alcoholic chocolate drinks. Incas made chicha from corn, sometimes chewed first to start the fermentation process. Temples often doubled as breweries because alcohol was sacred to the gods. Priests blessed fermented drinks before distribution to ensure divine favor. Fermented drinks were used as medicine to treat various ailments and diseases. Brewing was often women's work. The first brewers were likely female. The first taverns appeared as places to gather, drink, and share news. The first written laws regulated alcohol production, price, and consumption. Kings and pharaohs controlled alcohol production as a source of power and revenue. Fermented goods became valuable trade items along ancient trade routes. Ships carried wine and beer across seas. Fermentation made trade possible. Soldiers received daily alcohol rations because it was safer than water. Workers building monuments were paid in bread and beer. It was currency. Festivals centered around drinking. It bonded communities and eased social tensions. Marriage ceremonies included toasts. The word honeymoon comes from mead traditions. Funerals included alcohol offerings to honor the dead and ease grief. Artists, poets, and philosophers credited alcohol with inspiring their greatest works. Ancient poetry and literature often celebrated the joys of fermented drinks. Music and drinking went hand in hand. One fueled the other in ancient societies. Diplomatic meetings happened over drinks. Alcohol eased tensions and built trust. Treaties were sealed with shared drinks, a tradition that continues today. Ancient humans observed fermentation but didn't understand the science behind it. They attributed the magical transformation to gods and supernatural forces. It wasn't until Louis Pasteur in 1857 that we discovered yeast caused fermentation. Microscopic yeast cells consume sugar and produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. Different bacteria and yeast create different flavors in fermented products. Temperature control became crucial for consistent fermentation results. Wild fermentation uses airborne yeast, while cultured yeast gives predictable results. Sourdough starters are living cultures of yeast and bacteria passed down for generations. Some fermentation cultures are hundreds of years old, living family heirlooms. Fermented foods contain probiotics that improve gut health and digestion. Ancient humans unknowingly improved their microbiome through fermented foods. Fermentation preserves nutrients and makes them more bioavailable to our bodies. Fermentation breaks down toxins and anti-nutrients in plants and grains. Some fermentation processes actually create vitamins like B12 and K2. Fermented foods often have more nutrients than their raw counterparts. Alcohol affects the brain by enhancing GABA and suppressing glutamate, neurotransmitters. This reduces anxiety and inhibitions, making social interaction easier. This biological effect helped humans bond and cooperate in larger groups. Fermentation enabled civilization by allowing food storage and social bonding. But alcohol also has a dark side. Addiction has plagued humans for millennia. Ancient texts from every civilization warn against excessive drinking. The key was always moderation, a lesson humans are still learning. Throughout history, movements have tried to ban alcohol, with mixed results. Different cultures developed different relationships with fermented drinks. Mediterranean cultures integrated wine into daily meals as food, not just intoxicant. Northern European patterns tended toward binge drinking, rather than daily moderation. Some religions prohibit alcohol entirely, while others incorporate it into rituals. Fermentation may have driven human evolution by enabling larger brains and societies. Some populations evolved genetic mutations to better metabolize alcohol. We can trace human migration by following the spread of fermentation techniques. Medieval monasteries became centers of brewing excellence and innovation. Trappist monks still brew beer today, using centuries-old recipes and methods. Medieval taverns were community centers where news and ale flowed freely. Vikings brought mead on long voyages. It sustained them across dangerous seas. Medieval peasants drank ale with every meal because water was often contaminated. Renaissance alchemists discovered distillation, creating stronger spirits from fermented drinks. Whiskey, brandy, and vodka emerged as distilled versions of beer and wine. The age of exploration was fueled by barrels of beer, wine, and spirits. Naval crews received daily rum rations, a tradition that lasted until 1970. Colonial America brewed beer from corn and molasses when barley was scarce. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Samuel Adams were all brewers. The Industrial Revolution mechanized brewing and made beer cheap and abundant. Pasteur's discovery of yeast revolutionized our understanding of fermentation. Pasteurization killed harmful bacteria while preserving fermented products. Refrigeration changed fermentation from necessity to choice in developed nations. Prohibition in America failed because humans' desire for alcohol was too strong. Bootleggers made dangerous moonshine that sometimes blinded or killed drinkers. The craft beer movement revived ancient techniques and experimental flavors. Home brewing became legal again, allowing anyone to experiment with fermentation. Modern science is rediscovering what ancients knew: fermented foods heal the gut. Probiotic foods like yogurt and kefir are now sold as health supplements. Kombucha, an ancient fermented tea, became a billion-dollar modern industry. Traditional ferments, like kimchi and sauerkraut, are experiencing global popularity. High-end chefs use fermentation to create complex, umami-rich flavors. Fermentation is being rediscovered as a solution to modern food waste problems. Fermented plant proteins are emerging as sustainable alternatives to meat. Biotech companies are engineering yeast to create everything from vanilla to leather. Precision fermentation creates specific compounds without traditional brewing. Fermentation requires less energy and water than many modern food production methods. And fermentation preserves not just food, but cultural heritage and ancestral wisdom. Grandmothers still teach grandchildren ancient fermentation secrets worldwide. Fermentation festivals celebrate local traditions and bring communities together. Fermentation is both art and science, requiring intuition and precision. Wild fermentation connects us to our environment and local microbial ecosystems. Like wine, fermented foods express the terroir, the taste of a specific place. The slow food movement champions fermentation as resistance to industrial food. Fermentation gives communities food sovereignty and independence from corporations. Urban farmers use fermentation to preserve harvests and reduce food waste. Schools are teaching fermentation to reconnect children with food and science. The patience required for fermentation teaches mindfulness. In our instant world, fermentation is the story of humanity, our creativity, cooperation, and curiosity. For 13,000 years, fermentation has shaped who we are as a species. The same microbes that worked for our ancestors still work for us today. We are temporary caretakers of knowledge that will outlive us all. Fermentation teaches us to cooperate with nature, not dominate it. Trillions of microbes work for us, asking only for sugar in return. This humbles us. We're not alone on this planet and never have been. Fermentation brings people together across time, culture, and geography. Sharing fermented food and drink remains one of life's greatest pleasures. So raise a glass to our ancestors who discovered this magical transformation. Without fermentation, civilization as we know it would never have existed. It gave us safe drinks, preserved food, medicine, and social cohesion. You can join this 13,000-year tradition starting today in your own kitchen. All you need is salt, water, vegetables, and patience to begin. Your great-great-grandchildren might use the culture you start today. This is how humans think, across generations, beyond our own lifetimes. In a world of uncertainty, fermentation offers hope and continuity. What dies in the jar gives life to us. This is the cycle of existence. That forgotten bowl of fruit, 3,000 years ago, changed everything. From accidental discovery to civilization itself, this is the story of fermentation.